What is up, you guys? Diggerdan here, coming at you with another video. Today, I'm doing a review on Dark Force Rising, written by Timothy Zahn. So without further ado, let's dig into it. So for those of you who don't know what this book is, this is clearly Star Wars, and it is Legends. So when Disney bought the rights, they had all the existing novelizations and spin-off everything, and just put that in Legends, which at the time was Extended Universe, and said that this is no longer canon, and then their new movies and everything that Disney produces onward is canon. So this technically, in the eyes of Disney, is not canon, but in the eyes of the fans, it's the true canon, depending who you ask. But like I said, this is book 2 of the Thrawn Trilogy. This came out in 1992, I believe. So yeah, right in the middle of all that fun extended universe stuff. So before I get spoilers in the second book, I did like it more than the first book. If you didn't watch my first review, you should go watch that. But if you don't want to, then I rated Heir of the Empire, which is book 1, as a 7.06, and overall I rated Dark Force Rising as a 7.32. So there was, overall, I feel like it was just a better story, or just flowed better. Because again, usually, in my opinion, if a sequel I tend to like more than the first book or the first entry in a series, it's usually because the first book is laying a lot of the groundwork that the following books kind of take advantage of and don't have to go back and explain things like that. So yeah, this is a little more story happened and a little less setup, I feel. But yeah, I'm just going to go right into spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, click away. I feel like it's hard for me to kind of talk about this without talking spoilers, especially for the first book. So yeah, I would click away now. Yeah, like I said, I do like it, and I do like it more than the first book. And there's for a number of reasons. First, I'll start talking about emotional impact. That's the first category I like to rate. I rated emotional impact as a 7.3 for this book, where for the first one, for the Heir to the Empire, I rated that as a 6.9. So I felt much more invested in the second book. And again, I think it's because there was less groundwork that has to be laid, and it's just kind of taking advantage of what's already there. But yeah, emotional impact. So like I said for my last episode, that for the last book, I didn't really care for like Princess Leia's storyline at all. It was like, I mean, it's Star Wars, so everything's political, right? But like her thing was just politics, and it was just talking, and to me that was kind of boring. And this one, she still has some of that. There's a lot of those New Republic politics revolving around her, especially since she's the diplomat. But when she went to the alien planet, I forget what they're called, but it's flashed here on the screen. The ones that basically became servants to the Empire because the Empire had a battle over their planet, and then it just destroyed their planet, basically. So then they've been slowly trying to like purify the soil for these aliens ever since, and because of that goodness that the Empire has bestowed upon them, they send their sons and daughters in the Empire service to basically be assassins in these ultimate task force kick-ass aliens, right? So, and then Leia, so this is kind of like Leia's whole thing for this book, and she was digging more into it and trying to justify to these aliens, saying the Empire's not all that good. They're manipulating you and your culture and manipulating your people and just taking advantage of your lives, basically. And so that was a lot more intriguing for me this time around than what her story point for the last book was, which again was just kind of politics and just pushing the agenda for the New Republic, which I guess you could argue is basically the entire plot of this trilogy, is to push the agenda of the New Republic and eradicate the remaining Empire force, right? But again, Leia's story was way more interesting this time around, as well as Luke's and Han Solo's, honestly, which I think is probably more plot, but we'll get into that. So just everything was more interesting, and we spent more time with the characters, so I was a little more invested with the characters as well. Yeah, so just emotionally, I was more invested. Next is characters. I like to rate. I rated characters as a 7.7. Last time, for Heir to the Empire, I rated it as a 7.5. So it is, again, an increase by 0.2. Not quite as big of an increase for the emotional impact, but an increase nonetheless. So like I said, like Leia's, I felt way more connected with her this time. Her story was way more interesting, and just kind of her inner struggle of doing what's best for the Empire and doing what's best for the Republic, doing what's best for her family, doing what's best for these aliens she's trying to save, what's best for her honor, what's best in the memory of her dad, Darth Vader, or Anakin, but the aliens see her as Lady Vader. So I connect way more with her. And her being pregnant with twins. My wife is currently very heavily pregnant. And so I can, like, just the struggles that she's going through while being pregnant, I just can't imagine her having to go through this. And trying to have some, like, force training, and while she's trying to practice with her lightsaber, and while she's trying to, like, all these things. So I think Leia, maybe I didn't give her enough credit for the last book, but I think she's way more impressive in this book. Or maybe she just gets to portray more of that, if that makes sense. We got to see more in the head of Mara Jade this book as well, and kind of her fight between what her last promise to the Emperor was of killing Luke Skywalker, and her kind of starting to trust Luke Skywalker, and like her current crime boss, Karad, however you want to say it, and how he got betrayed because she accidentally led Admiral Thrawn to Karad's base, and all those things. And then she, again, so that inner turmoil between what she needs to do with Luke, but then also she feels like she betrayed Karad when she was going to warn him and all these things. And then she has to, and then she goes to Luke to save Karad and not beg for his forgiveness, because she never needs to do that, but basically just as an apology, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. And then Karad completely understands. Very professional man. And so we got to spend more time with Karad in a different light, and I liked him more as well. And then the one annoying counselor that's like a Botan or Bothan, whatever, this name. That guy, he's even more annoying this book, trying to pull his little political schemes, especially at the end of the book when he literally pulls a blaster out on Leia, to take control of whatever the battle is at the end there. So that was wild, just weird. Again, he's not a good character, or he is a good character. Like he's well written. He's just not a good person, is what I should say. I don't like him as a person, but as a character, being that menace or being that thorn in the side of everybody, he does a good job. But it just makes me not like him even more, if that makes sense. So it's kind of that, like, I struggle, like, he's well written and his story beats make sense, but it doesn't mean I have to like him, right? So yeah, basically, and then we got to spend more time with Lando and Luke and Han Solo as well, and just kind of them interacting with each other is interesting. And we get to see more like smugglers or kind of other characters that came from like Han Solo's and Lando's like background. So that was interesting. Enough with characters. Moving on to plot. I think this is the biggest increase from the last book. I rated plot as a 7.1. Last time for Heir to the Empire, I rated it as a 6.5. So I liked it significantly more. Because basically the plot for this book, for Dark Force Rising, is that there is a mysterious, like, there's 200 or 50, like, just dreadnought ships that, like, during the Clone Wars, they had, like, these, like, slave computers or slave something. I forget exactly what it's called. But it's less dependent on people, so you need only 2,000 people opposed to, like, 10,000 people to run a ship, something like that. So it's more automated, I guess. But after the fleet got done being built, and then when they were first going to go out and do missions, like, the entire fleet, like, something weird happened where the crew all got sick, and then they all died, and then, like, all the ships, like, hyperspaced, and no one knows where they went. And that was, like, 50 years ago or something like that, or 30 years ago, I think. I don't remember. It was weird. But then no one knows the location. But then, of course, some people like Karad have happened to stumble upon it. And so it's basically a race between the Empire and the New Republic to find the fleet because they both need ships to take out the other faction's ships, basically. So it's kind of a race to it but it's like they don't know what the other faction knows. They think that the other one might, like Thrawn thinks that Karad is going to go to the New Republic and make a deal with them, but he thinks it's going to take some time to negotiate that deal. So Thrawn thinks he has a lot of time to track it down. So it's like all these things. It's like kind of like chess back and forth, but the Empire doesn't know what the New Republic knows, and the New Republic doesn't know what the Empire knows. And then you also have that stupid alien counselor, the Bothan guy, that is kind of thwarting like Leia's and Han's and Luke's attempts at like every chance he can, and you don't know why. And it's like, are you really an Empire plant? Like, what's wrong with you? I think my prediction I have is that he is an Empire plant, but he's trying to play it off like he's not. I don't know. I just don't like him. So anyway, needless to say, it's kind of a confusing plot, at least the way I'm explaining it. But I enjoyed it a lot more. I think it made more sense. And while this whole thing's going on with the two factions trying to find this fleet that's been disappeared for X amount of years, Leia is at these aliens' planets and trying to make amends with them. Make amends, or like basically steal them from the Republic, or for the Republic from the Empire. And so it kind of works. It's interesting. Point is, last book I said we never actually know what color lightsaber Leia has, which bothered me, unless I just missed it. But in this one, it explicitly says that she has the green-white light off her lightsaber. So she also has a green lightsaber, very similar to Luke, which I thought was interesting. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I would see her more as a blue lightsaber person. And I don't know if that's just because in the sequel movies she has a blue lightsaber, and that's like in the back of my mind. That could be. If that's the case, I'm ashamed of that. But yeah, that was a complaint I had for last book that kind of got solved in this one, so I thought that was interesting. Next point I like to discuss is dialogue and prose. I rated this as a 7, which is the exact same as what I rated the last book. It's the same author. He's got the same voice, so nothing really changed. I think just the story in general got better, but the dialogue and prose was the same. You have like the normal quips between like Solo and Lando, even the quips between, well, Solo and everybody, really. And you have like the same weird like science fiction-y jargon that like they just throw in there. Like hyperdrive, light speed, all those things sort of make sense, but then they just throw in like an R257 unit. It's like, okay, I don't know what that is, and I got to go on Wikipedia and look at that up just so I know what that looks like. So that is kind of annoying. I don't know if I really talked about that last review, but that's something that does bother me with the Star Wars books, is that they just kind of mention specific alien species and just expect you to know what they look like and like where they come from. Which kind of bothers me. But then also when they just say random letters for droids, and it's like, I know what R2-D2 looks like. I know what C-3PO looks like. So I know if you say an R2 unit, I know, or a protocol droid, I know. But if you just say random letters and numbers and then that droid, it's like, I don't know what that looks like. I gotta go look that up. So that kind of annoys me, but not enough. It's kind of expected, I feel like. If you've read any Star Wars, you kind of expect it at that point. And then last category I like to rate is world building. I rated world building as a 7.5, which is 0.1 higher than the last book. I think it, like I've said a couple times before, I think this second book just benefited from the groundwork that was laid with the first book. And we got to explore a little bit more with that alien race that Leia visited, kind of explore them. That alien race kind of reminds me of like the Fremen from Dune, or the Aiel from Wheel of Time. Kind of like classic tribal, like desert people, but that are like really good hunters and really good fighters. But then they're in clans. And, like, so we got to explore more of that. We got to explore a little bit more with like kind of the Force. Something I didn't mention was Kabath, that Jedi Master that I think is really a Dark Jedi, who tried to have Luke study with him, and Luke did go and study with him for what seemed like a couple weeks, but then Luke left so then he could help Karad, and then it doesn't seem like Luke's going to come back. Yeah, so that was interesting. I don't like Kabath. I think that whole thing was weird. I also think if your whole thing, Kabath, is you just want to train Luke, and why would you let him go so easily? I don't get that one. So that made me question his motives a lot. And it seems like towards the end, at the last chapter or last couple of pages, seems like Kabath is kind of maybe out for revenge now, and he's maybe even more insane than he was before. So that'll be interesting to explore. But yeah, I am excited for the last book. Another thing I didn't really mention is that we didn't get to see Thrawn much in this book, which is just kind of funny when it's the Thrawn Trilogy and his half face is on the cover. So I hope we get to see even more of him in the last book. I know that it's Star Wars, so you got to follow like kind of the main cast from the movies. I get it, but like I understand they built Thrawn up to be this powerful, menacing, all-knowing, like just very smart individual, and he is. But I don't feel like we got to spend enough time with him in this book to set him up as like the arch villain for the last book, if that makes sense. Like, I know he is, obviously, but like I don't know. Like, I think with what we saw so far, I think that Rebel Alliance, or not the Rebel Alliance, it's the New Republic, could pretty much like take Thrawn one for one. So I hope that we see a little bit more of his smarts and more of his menace in the last book to make it really feel like a threat that, wow, the Empire really could come back and the New Republic could be wiped out. But I haven't really seen too much of that. So hopefully that picks up in the last book. So anyway, those are my overall thoughts. Like I said, Dark Force Rising 7.32, which is 0.24 better than the last book. So overall, I liked it more. Didn't love it. Obviously had my issues with it, but for Star Wars book, it's pretty solid. So what do you guys think? Have you guys read the original Thrawn trilogy? If so, what do you think of it? If not, does me talking about it want to make you give it a try? If it does, then awesome. If not, that's okay too. I get it. It's Star Wars. I feel like you're either going to love it or hate it. So anyway, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like down below. Want to see more from me, Diggerdan, please hit that subscribe button, as well as that bell notification icon so you guys know when I upload each and every single time. And I'll catch you fools in the next one. Thanks for watching.